Hi Mark, thank you so much for joining us today. Could you please tell us a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself, tell us what you do?
Sure, thanks very much for having me. My name is Mark Topley. What I basically do is help dentists to have more successful practices by helping them become more sustainable, more responsible, more enjoyable places to work. So that's what I do in a nutshell. I kind of came into dentistry in around about 2003, so a little while ago now. I worked for a long time with a charity called Bridge to Aid, and I was based overseas with them. And then when I left Bridge to Aid in about 5 years ago, I set up this practice, which is all about helping businesses to be more responsible, which comes from my background as a charity CEO, combined with my interest in sustainability and all those sorts of things.
So you obviously have a big educational background as well in sustainability. Can you tell us a little bit about what are the issues in sustainability, or I guess a lack of sustainability in the dental profession?
Yeah, I think the thing that people most often think about is single use and how much of an issue single use is. And that's one of the things that people tell me about the most, they get most frustrated about. Obviously, during the pandemic, PPE was a big issue, and then having to dispose of those things. The use of plastics is an issue. Travel is a big issue. A lot of the carbon footprint of a practice is the travel to and from the practice, by the team and by the patients. So that becomes an issue. Clinical waste is an issue. Regulation is an issue. So there are lots of different things which all kind of combine. But I think, although single use is a big issue, it's not by any means the only issue, and it's something that people can certainly do something about.
So lots of issues. Could you please tell us some ways that a practice might be able to become more sustainable then?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things. The main thing, as I said, that the whole thing about travel is a big issue. So becoming more sustainable, what most people think about, they think about carbon footprint. And so anything you can do to combine travel appointments for people that are in the same family, anything you can do to encourage your team to walk to work or to use public transport or to cycle to work, which makes them more healthy, those things are important as well. Digital dentistry, and particularly we saw this during the pandemic, people started to become more accepting of remote monitoring of dentistry, and so that can be a good tool as well. So that all helps to cut down on travel to and from the practice. The other big chunk of your carbon footprint is the procurement. And so how many times does the truck turn up at the door with another order of just one thing? Can you combine your ordering and make your ordering more sporadic so that there's fewer deliveries to the practice? So a big focus on carbon is something that people can do, and then making sure that you're looking at your procurement to make sure that it's as sustainable as possible, and you're kind of limiting those appointments. So carbon footprint is a big one, and then there's several other areas that I usually look at with clients. So recycling everything possible, making sure that you have the right bins, that you've invested, if you need to, in curbside recycling. Or if your council doesn't provide that, then making sure that cans, bottles, paper, all those things are being recycled as much as possible. The issue around single use is an interesting one, because a lot of people say, well, we use paper cups chairside rather than plastic cups, and that's better. And the point on that is largely moot, because it's not so much what the cup is made out of, it's the fact that it's used once. It's the energy and the resources that have gone into making that cup, which is the problem. So wherever you can, and a lot of my clients use stainless steel cups chairside, and I guess we focus on that because it's the most visible way of showing patients that you're doing something different for the environment. There's lots of things you can't do that are all hidden, but certainly with cups chairside we can do it. And anything you can swap out to reduce the amount of resources that you're using either once or that you can replace with reusable, then that's a good thing to do. Energy is a big issue at the moment, and I think the interesting thing for me is that people are now starting to adopt the behaviours that sustainability professionals have been trying to get them to adopt for years. But now the fact that the energy prices are so high, turning your heating down, making sure you've not got heating on while the window's wide open and there's energy just going out the window, switching off lights, using energy efficient appliances, all help to save money. So energy is a big one, and being as efficient with energy as possible. If you can go to a renewable supplier, that's a great way to become more sustainable as well, and that will seriously impact your carbon footprint because you're using energy from sustainable sources. If you're doing a whole new practice, if you're rebuilding I've got 2 clients at the moment that are designing their practices in a sustainable way as possible, and that means they're putting ground source heat pumps in rather than having gas-fired central heating. The flooring is different because they're using more sustainable materials. There's clay going on the walls rather than plaster because it absorbs carbon, and they're using low emission paints, those sorts of things. So you can do it on the construction side as well. Saving water is another important way to save resources and be more sustainable. So low flow taps can save you 96% of the water that you would use. Bio cleaners, there are now medical grade cleaners available which are all plant based, and so there's no harmful chemicals going onto the work surfaces. It's better for the environment, it's better for your staff, and all those sorts of things can make you more sustainable, as well as the basic things like making sure that your coffee and your tea comes from a fairly traded source, because that's a more sustainable, more transparent supply chain. So loads and loads of things that people can do. I think what often happens is that people just don't know where to start, and so they kind of do nothing. But those are some ideas.
Nice. Yeah, so there's clearly lots of solutions that someone can take, or at least some of them, if not all of them. But what might be holding a practice back from becoming more sustainable then, and how can we help them to overcome some of those obstacles?
Yeah, I think perception of cost is often an issue. People think that everything's going to be more expensive if it's more sustainable. But I think it's important to recognise that sustainability is an investment. I mean, as well as being a longer term investment in the future of everybody, actually it's an investment which pays off because of the improved perception that you get from patients, the improved engagement that you get from teams. So although there may be some short-term things that you need to do to overcome that, cost is often an issue, but once people dig under the surface, often they find that it saves them money. And a lot of my clients at the moment are now saving money because they're using less energy. So that's an important thing to overcome. Time can be an issue, the time to think about it, the time to put it into practice. Some people lack ideas. Where do we even start? We kind of got some ideas about what we could be doing. I think often the will is there, but people don't know where to start, and so it's important for them to kind of get organised. And there's loads of resources out there now. Dental Susnet is a great resource in terms of a website. It's a free website. You can join the network, and they run courses on sustainability. Dental CSR certification has all of their standards published for free, so you can just follow those even if you don't do the standard itself. So I think the perception of cost, time and lack of organisation, I think if you can get yourself organised and start with simple things, then that's often the best way to start.
Right, and you did mention about investing in the business. It's not just about the environment, but also as a business. How can being sustainable set you apart?
Well, I think the interesting thing is that the pandemic kind of accelerated some trends that were already on the way. So even pre-pandemic, the data tells us that 88% of consumers expect a business to do social and environmental good as a normal day-to-day part of their business practices. Amongst millennials, it's about 3/4 of people expect and look for good CSR in an employer. And so both with consumers and with staff, by being more sustainable, you are increasing your chances of attracting the right kind of people. And I think the companies that over the last few years that have really invested in sustainability and shown their credentials authentically are benefiting from that. The converse, of course, is true, because if you don't do it, then you appear uncaring. But certainly, as making the investment in sustainability and responsibility pays off in those two ways, because you will command higher loyalty, greater trust, greater reputation with consumers, and you're going to satisfy that particular, that kind of, millennial generation, 75% of the workforce now, 3/4 of them looking for sustainability in employers. The chances are that you're going to find better people and more value-driven people if you're making those credentials front and center, and so that's going to help with your recruitment and retention as well.
Definitely, and it is becoming more of a trend, and as someone who might go to the dentist and look out for a more sustainable practice, what would be the risk of a practice not becoming more sustainable? I know you touched a little bit about being uncaring, but
yeah, I think that the danger is that you become less relevant. A friend of mine, Chris Barrow, has started talking a lot recently about values and an expression of your values. And what he says is that when patients look for treatment nowadays, particularly private treatment, when they're shopping around for treatment, they're not just interested in the customer service, the clinical excellence. They're looking for an expression of your values. And if you don't make those values explicit, and sustainability and responsibility are a great way to do that, as well as showing that you are human, that you're approachable, that you care about the same things as the typical patient cares about. If you're not showing that, then people may well go elsewhere, and that's certainly what the data tells us. So it's not as simple just to say, well, if you're not sustainable, then you're not going to get any business. But you are making the chances of your business appearing caring less likely, and you're not putting those values, which are so important to people nowadays, front and center in how you're presenting yourself to the world.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that's very useful to kind of keep in mind for all practices. And is there anything else that you would like to add or say?
I think the important thing is that sustainability can really kind of trap people in the headlights. It's like, oh, sustainability, how do we even get started? All I would do is encourage people to talk to their teams. Somebody asked me last week, and a presentation I was doing, how do I start tomorrow? It's like, well, your team will know ways that you can be more sustainable. So start with those ideas, and then do those ideas, and then look at the main areas, the ones that I described earlier, the resources that are at dentalcsr.co.uk and on the Dental Susnet webpage. Look at those resources and decide which things you're going to do. I've got free guides on my website as well. Bear in mind that to get all of this done, it takes time, but so have a plan, start small and build things up from there, and as long as you're on the right trajectory, you're going to start feeling better about things, and you can continue that journey, because it's not a one and done, it's a continual process. Things are changing so quickly.
Excellent. It's better to do something than, I guess, nothing at all, right? So
absolutely,
start somewhere. Excellent. Thank you so much, Mark, for your time and for sharing all your insight with us, and we hope to see you soon.
Great. Thanks very much for having me.